Hello, and welcome to today's webinar with Exponent Philanthropy. Exponent Philanthropy is a vibrant membership organization that provides resources and valuable connections to help thousands of philanthropists with few or no staff make the most of the minutes they have and the dollars they give. We amplify and celebrate the work of this diverse group of givers who choose to give big while staying small. Today, we're talking about youth in philanthropy. And we're excited to announce the release of a set of teen philanthropy readers. There are 7 readers so far on a variety of topics, from an introduction to the nonprofit world and how to get to impact to collaboration and speaking out. And we've got 2 youth and 1 youth leader and a colleague on our webinar today to talk about this and show us how to use the resources. So here is our fabulous speaker team. Annie Hernandez is the Executive Director of the Frieda C. Family Foundation. My colleague Janice Simpson-Shaw heads up our family, philanthropy, and youth work. And we've got 2 youth taking a little time out from their daily school schedule to join us. Luke Sturtz is a member of the DECO Foundation and serves on the Youth Committee for Youth Philanthropy Connect, also known as YPC. And Sarah Saltzman is a member of the Frieda C. Family Foundation's Junior Board and also a leader with YPC. And I just got a note that you can't see the slides, so sorry about that. Here we go. I'll just show everyone the great youth slide. There you go. You could see this awesome slide. Sorry about that. The readers and our speakers. So we've got 4 speakers with us, and then I'm here in the office in Washington, D.C. with my colleague, Nikki Hilgert. Nikki is going to be helping out with your questions today. So we're going to take a quick look at the technology. For those who are unfamiliar, you have this screen where you see the viewer window is where you see the slides. We also have our speakers on webcam, so you should be seeing them on your screen. And then we have your control panel. So you've got the little button, the green. My blue arrow points to an orange arrow, so you can minimize that so you can see the screen in full. And then, of course, the questions pane. If you have any questions, just send them to us. For those of you on Twitter, please use, we've got a few handles. They're going to appear on a bunch of different slides, so you'll see them at the bottom. Keep tweeting and use the hashtag YouthPhil. Get your comments out there. And before we begin, I just would really like to say a hearty thank you to the Frieda C. Family Foundation and Youth Philanthropy Connect for partnering with us on today's program, as well as for giving their support to develop the Teen Philanthropy Café series. We're really excited about the partnership. And our agenda today, so you'll see we're going to start with some backstory and some polling. We're going to talk about the landscape of youth engagement. We've got an introduction to our fabulous youth, some tips for getting involved, talk about the teen philanthropy readers. We're going to hear a sample conversation with our youth, and they will give their, we'll answer some Q&A, and they will give their youthful words of wisdom. And with that, I pass it to Janice.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and thank you all so much for joining us here today. This is such a pleasure and a privilege to be with you talking about and learning about such an exciting topic. So just a bit of backstory and context. In 2008, our organization invited some of the youth from the Frieda C. Family Foundation to present at our annual conference. And I vividly remember that conference, and I remember the seriousness with which the youth were preparing to lead that session. It ended up being a jam-packed room and one of the top-rated sessions at this whole large conference. So we and those that were in that room were so impressed with the smarts and the thoughtfulness that these youth brought to grant-making and the energy, frankly, that they were bringing to their individual foundations and to our field and their grantees alike. It was very exciting. So in the intervening years, since 2008, the Fox Foundation has really been one of the groups at the forefront of what I would say is a burgeoning youth philanthropy movement. And we'll hear a little bit more about that process here today. And we've been really excited to partner with them along the way, and I'd like to share why. Why is this topic so important to us here at Exponent Philanthropy and our members? So first of all, every year we survey our members. Many of you have probably participated in our annual survey. Year in and year out, succession is top of mind for our members. How to, in a thoughtful and strategic way, pass the torch to the next generation. And each week we get calls from members trying to figure out this very question, how to involve my kids in a way that makes sense to them. And we very much preach the younger the better. So we're really excited to help educate our members and others in the field about this topic. So I've been privileged to attend the Youth Philanthropy Connect conference, which you'll hear more about, that's run by the Fox Foundation. And I even have attended with my own family who are listening in today. It's Take Your Child to Work Day across the country, and my almost 7-year-old daughter is listening in with my husband at his workplace. Just yesterday, I attended Career Day and talked to 2 classes of first graders about philanthropy. And I want to tell you all, they had smart insights. It's pretty exciting. So I'll say hi to my daughter, Lila. And now let's dive into the subject at hand. Let's go to the next slide, please, Lauren. So we want to ask you to think about your own personal journey in philanthropy and why you're joining us on today's call. So first of all, take a moment to think about how old you were when you first remember giving back. And Lauren's going to launch a little poll for us. You'll see that poll up on your screen, and go ahead and select which one of those. When do you remember giving back? And I encourage you to define giving back as you see. I just heard from a listener, I just need to share this, that 2 kids are listening in with her also. This is someone calling from Chicago. So welcome to you and to your kids, Beth. That's wonderful. So how old were you when you first remember giving back? And your kids can feel free to answer that, Beth. How old were you? Giving back in whatever that means to you, monetarily, volunteer time, other ways, 0 through 8, 9 through 12, 13 to 18, 19 to 22, or 23 or older. And we ask you this because we just want to get into this space for ourselves, to think about it ourselves as human beings, since this is such personal work. So here's what we're saying. Almost everyone has voted. Thank you so much for participating. And let's see, the bulk of us, I think Lauren's going to be able to share these results, or no, I'm just going to read them out. Oh, here we go. Schnazzy. Thank you, Lauren. So the bulk of us were somewhere between 9 and 18 years old. And I find that really telling because the work we're doing today is talking about engaging just that group, teens and even younger than teens, in giving back. So you see the bulk of us got involved early on. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's go to the next poll, please, Lauren, and the next slide. So the next slide asks, and I think you can select all that apply, why are you joining us on today's call? And that will help us make sure that we cater our comments to what you're interested in learning. Are you interested in learning about succession planning for your own foundation? Are you interested in building philanthropic capacity in your community? And you'll hear how one foundation on today's call, the DECO Foundation, does just that. Are you interested in how youth can really learn how to make a difference, or about youth gaining skills? Or are you already involved in the space and you're just keen to learn more and perhaps to share? So please go ahead and respond to that, and we will let you know in one moment what we're hearing. Great. So our 2 front runners, Lauren will bring up the results in just a moment here. It looks like our 2 front runners are around youth gaining professional and personal skills through philanthropy and succession planning. So that's really helpful for us to bear in mind, but really each one of the topics has a lot of interest. So thank you all for answering. You'll see the responses there. Thank you for participating in that poll. We really appreciate it. So now to dive deep into this subject, I'm going to pass the baton to our awesome, really experts here today, Sarah, Luke, and Annie. Thank you all so much for taking the time, and take it away. Annie?
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Janice and Lauren. It's just such a joy to get to partner with Exponent Philanthropy in this area of youth philanthropy, and really recognizing that it is a very personal and a really complicated issue that lots of people are thinking about in different ways. And so really a hearty thank you to each of you that are also attending today. As you really think about how to build your capacity for engaging youth in this really life-changing experience of philanthropy. As a staff member of the Lumpkin Family Foundation a number of years ago, I was given the task to help build the capacity of the next generation members that you see pictured here. While the Lumpkin Family Foundation is actually headquartered in Tune, Illinois, the family is very geographically dispersed, as we know a lot of families and family foundations are. as a way for the cousins to get to know one another and to really grow up working together, which their parents hadn't had the experience of. The foundation and the family implemented character education at age 5 and at age 10, a collaborative grant-making experience. And as the cousins started to get older and reached 16 plus, they were really ready for something else, but they didn't know what that was and really wanted to explore what others were doing as a way to guide what was next for them. So since they had never met any other young people that were doing grant making, which we find about most of our youth philanthropists, it was really important for them to reach beyond just their family and foundation. And so through our national membership, like through Exponent Philanthropy, we actually had a chance to meet the Frieda C. Family Foundation based out of Los Angeles. And what you'll see on this next slide is a photo of many of the members of the Frieda C. family who began involving the youth of their family at age 8 in a junior board that does grant making. So in 2010, as you'll see on the next slide, the Lumpkin and the Fox family youth had a chance to meet, and they shared their models of grant making with one another. One of the youth said that what he took away most was surprised at how much more substantial what they were doing was than they thought that they were. You know, so it really affirmed the work that was going on. And so after this learning exchange, the youth of the Fox family went back to their board and asked if they could meet with other groups of youth that are also involved in grant making. And so in 2011, this led to what was called the Youth on Board retreat that you'll see on the next slide. And at this retreat, 4 family foundations were brought together with their youth to connect and learn from one another. And coming together was so inspirational and really important to all of the participants, youth and adults alike. So really this is an intergenerational experience. And it was so important that it really led the youth wanting to create an opportunity to connect and learn with one another over time. And what evolved out of this is what we now call the network Youth Philanthropy Connect. And so we have been working over the past 3 years, which you'll see on the next slide, to really host and grow annual gatherings of youth philanthropists, especially that are doing grant making, through families, community foundations, and school-based programs where the youth that are ages 8 to 21 and the adults that are supporting them get to meet one another and learn together. And what was really interesting, and what you'll see on the next slide, is that as we began bringing together those that were involved in youth philanthropy, a number of really important learnings and gaps became clear. That we at the Frieda C. Family Foundation have worked hard to align strategies and a lot of our grant making to address. And so the first gap is that there are so many ways that foundations and families are supporting youth philanthropy. Some of them are the next generation of their family, like the Lumpkin and the Fox families, or in community-based or school-based programs like the Depot Foundation that you'll hear more from Luke about in a bit. As we continue to meet more and more of these foundations and programs, we realized that many of them didn't know one another, and that there were many resources that are actually available for youth philanthropy, but that weren't necessarily being utilized to their full potential. We also realized that there were some important resources missing, especially for philanthropic families. So to this end, we have been partnering with the organizations that you see listed here to develop a number of resources to really fill in these gaps. So before we dive deeply into the Teen Philanthropy Café readers, we wanted to back up and share some of our important learnings in developing these resources. So what you'll see on the next slide here are some landscape scan observations. And through our partnership with the Foundation Center, we completed a scan of the landscape of youth philanthropy based on sector data and significant research last year. We could probably do multiple webinars on all the juicy stuff that came out of the report. But today, I just wanted to set a bit of a context and give you some high points. So 3 general observations. One is that there is a lot of growing interest and activity in aging down philanthropy, especially grant making, to include young people, period. So know that this very much we see as a movement that is beginning in the field, much like Janice shared. Secondly, that there is a lot of ways that foundations, philanthropic families, nonprofits, and schools are doing and teaching youth philanthropy and grant making. There are many models. You're going to hear about two more intensely today. But the common theme around the models is that youth are empowered as critical thinkers, as team players, and as decision makers that are really encouraged to be active in their community. And then I think the third thing that I'd like to share with you about the landscape scan today is that we have evidence now through this scan that foundations are supporting this kind of work. But as you see, the extent is really unclear. During the grants review part of this process, we uncovered close to 900 grants between 2001 and 2013 that were awarded to over 70 different foundations supporting youth philanthropy programs. While the grants amounts range drastically, what we found is that in order to more accurately provide trends in the future related to youth philanthropy, we've got to start reporting on what we're doing in youth philanthropy and telling one another and reporting that data so that we can look at what's happening in the sector over time. So we're now working with the Foundation Center to develop an online hub for information and resources related to youth philanthropy. So please do make sure, if we don't already know about your youth philanthropy efforts or interests, please let us know so that we can include you in on the fun that's going to be happening over the next year or so. So to help go into and explain a couple of these models, it's now my great honor to introduce two amazing youth philanthropists that are involved in their own youth philanthropy programs, as well as serve on our national youth leadership team for Youth Philanthropy Connect. So first, I'd like to introduce Luke, who's going to give a brief introduction, and then Sarah will follow. So Luke, let me turn it over to you. Welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Annie. So I'm Luke Sturts. I live in Churubusco, Indiana. And I guess my philanthropy experience starts with the DECO Foundation, specifically a group called HANDS, which stands for Helping Achieve New Direction Through Students. This is a foundation that is based just in Whitley County, where I live. It's a collaboration of 8th graders through 12th graders in the 3 different schools in our county, that being Columbia City, Churubusco, and Whitco. We apply each year to the DECO Foundation for money to grant out into our community. And along with the grant applications that are sent into our foundation, we also do community service, go out in the community, and actually see that impact that way. From there, I moved up to DECO's FISH, which stands for Philanthropic Ideas, Strategy, and Heart. And this group kind of facilitates all these different youth pods under the DECO Foundation, which are in 4 different states, that being Iowa, Minnesota, Indiana, and Alabama. And we, again, kind of just give direction to all these different youth pods and help facilitate in that way. And I guess my most recent organization that I've become involved with is Youth Philanthropy Connect, that being YPC and Annie's Foundation, and kind of just being a part of that leadership team and planning regional committees there. So.
Great. Thank you, Luke. You really, it's so impressive to know that you have not only had local, but then statewide and now national experience as a high schooler in youth philanthropy.
I'm so
pretty incredible. Thank you, Luke. So Sarah, give us your scoop. Give us a little bit of background about your involvement.
Yeah, my name is Sarah Saltzman. I live in Los Angeles, California. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I actually entered the world of philanthropy through nonprofit work. And my grandparents had been running a nonprofit literacy organization since well before I was born, and I was immersed in that from a very young age. And what I ended up going to the original Youth on Board retreat as a representative of a nonprofit group, and from there was invited to join the youth board of the Fox Family Foundation, which were family friends of my grandparents. And then I ended up joining in on the process of Youth Philanthropy Connect and returning to the conference every year now from the perspective of a philanthropist, and working with my fellow youth board members to create the conference that it is now. And so now I'm on the same the board that runs it as Luke is, and it's really just become this whole support system of philanthropy that is so much bigger than my 12-year-old self as a nonprofit volunteer could ever have imagined.
Sarah, what I love so many things about your story as well, and one lesson that I'd love for folks that are attending to understand is that what we hear is from a number of different families that say, gosh, how do I do a junior board if I have a smaller family, or if we're at this gap of ages in our family members where there's not a group of 6 or 8 young people that are in their middle school to high school years. And Sarah is a great example of how at the Frieda C Family Foundation we have the third generation of family members that are cousins. But because of our numbers being smaller right now, just with where we are in the life cycle of the family, Sarah and her sister Sammy, as family friends, were invited to join the junior board. And so not only has it added such amazing capacity and energy to our junior board to have external board members, but it also has been just such an amazing opportunity to watch Sarah and Sammy both grow as youth philanthropists. So thank you, Sarah, for your introduction. So we're going to go into some tips around engaging youth in philanthropy. We're really excited to also learn from you and your experiences. So in order to kick off that learning, we're going to, while Luke and Sarah are sharing their advice, we would like you to use the GoToMeeting control panel, and you should have the question box. And we'd love for you to type in any tips and ideas for engaging youth in philanthropy or grant making that you have. So these could be things that you've tried. These could be other tips that you would have to offer from working with youth in the past. So what we'd like to do is, while we're sharing some of our tips, we'd love for you to share yours, and then those will be summarized and shared after the webinar. So Sarah, can I kick it over to you to share the first tip?
Sarah, I think you're still on mute. No problem.
Sorry, my bad. Involving youth in creation, I think, is really important in starting youth on the process of philanthropy, because I think there's a generational feel of powerlessness that comes with being in middle school and high school, of having your entire schedule dictated for you, being in school 8 hours a day. You feel like you have very little power over who you are and what you're capable of doing as a tween teenager. And so I think involving youth in the creation really helps to change that perspective and help them understand that philanthropy is a way for them to change that and really have power to impact the world. And I know that with the Fox Foundation, we've been doing a collaborative grant cycle, and the adult board essentially said to us, here is your allotted amount of money, and we're leaving this to you to, within the realm of our mission statement, find the specific area that you guys want to focus on, and you guys are going to do everything. You're going to do the site visits, do the grant applications, review them, and ultimately decide where and why the money's, who the money's going to. And that was really incredible, because it was our ideas, it was our brainstorming session, and it gave us a sense of control over the impact we were having on the world, especially as, mostly high school students, to know that we can do something. And the same thing with Youth Philanthropy Connect, where we have a junior board that, of course, has adult supervision, but is mostly run just by the youth, and bouncing ideas off of each other and just being able to get that that sense of impact without having an adult tell you what to do. It's really important.
Very wise advice. Luke, how about number 2?
Yeah, absolutely. So number 2 is providing training with the context. You can know philanthropy, but without knowing, I guess, what makes philanthropy in its background, its foundation, it becomes difficult to be able to progress without kind of knowing that. So in my experience under DECO, I had like 2-day sessions where the adults who were experienced and were knowledgeable on the subject kind of taught us about grant making at its core, what that meant, what that truly was. They explained what a nonprofit was, which is a huge thing. I remember being involved in philanthropy for a few years even and not even knowing what a nonprofit organization did or why they did what they did. Even outside those main vocabulary words behind philanthropy, they offered advice and practice on public presentation, which is such a large part of philanthropy. Being able to talk with other people, being able to be personable, and just being able to, again, just to talk with people, and that's such a huge part of philanthropy. I mean, you're involved with other people. You're constantly having conversations and in that relational value. But at the end of it all, training can only get you so far, and actually going out and practicing what you're being taught is I think is the biggest part of this training is the hands-on training, and actually going out and participating in philanthropy and just getting out there and doing it. So from here, I think we'll go right on to 3. So
Great.
So the third tip we have is engaging kid-friendly adults who know when to get out of the way when appropriate. I think this is very important in terms of it being youth philanthropy, which with emphasis on the word youth and the fact that youth are the basis, or should be the basis of the organization. That isn't always the case, even though it was a youth organization. The biggest part, at the end of the day, the youth should be the ones, maybe not controlling, but the ones making large decisions. And the adults, the adults, what they should be doing is just kind of facilitating and making sure, that idea isn't crazy, but at the end of the day, it can be hard, and that's okay. Don't be that like, okay, this is hard, we can't do that. At the end of it, youth are probably going to come up with ideas that you may think are crazy, but you got to know that fine line between, again, being crazy and being hard. But to push them, to encourage them to be able to complete what they're doing, and at the end of the day, I know from personal experience, I think the best conversation I ever had within FISH was when my leaders kind of left the room. I know I have a listener on here from the DECO Foundation. I was actually here during that conversation. I think she would agree with me that, once they left, we had the most true conversation, got the most out of the conversation once the adults were out of the room. Whether that was because fear of, getting their judgment or whatever that was, that, we got things done, and it was really useful when the adults can step back and let the youth do what they were doing. So, yeah.
Here, here. Yes, yes. Sarah, take us away.
Yeah, so for the 4th tip we have, which is connecting personal giving and volunteerism with philanthropy, I'm kind of coming from a reverse angle, as Luke was talking about, from where I started with volunteering before I entered the world of philanthropy. And I think it's really important to see both sides of that process, because as a nonprofit, part of a nonprofit family, it was, okay, I know my grandma's applying for grant applications and I know there's funding, but I have no idea where it comes from. I have no idea what this process is. It was just a sort of vague word that was thrown around, and I didn't really know what any of it meant. And then as I joined the junior board, I started to realize, okay, these are the same words, they have a different meaning now because we're the ones doing them. And, when it was grants and site visits and all these things, then it became, okay, I know what these are because we receive them as a nonprofit. And it really allowed me to not just be kind of randomly giving off money, here's a grant, here's a grant. It made it a more emotional, personal connection, to really understand both sides of that and see that as a philanthropist, this is the impact this has, this is where the nonprofit groups are coming from, this is what they need from us, and as a nonprofit volunteer, to understand, okay, this is where the money comes from, this is where what they want to know during site visits, and just to really understand that it's a process that involves both parties, and from everyone to the people who are giving you money to give to grants, to the volunteers. It's everybody's involved in this process and helping people and helping causes, and that they're really deeply intertwined. And it's important to see how both aspects work.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that connection has been really important for most of our youth philanthropists. It's not that they're just doing the grant making. Most are like both of you that are also volunteering, and some may be doing that with their schools or personally, and really trying to connect all those dots. Absolutely, Sarah. So Luke, why don't you kick off and then toss to Sarah the final tip?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the final tip is to provide hands-on grant-making opportunities that show impact. And I know for me personally, that's huge. I mean, at the end of the day, you can just sit there and look at a paper and say, okay, accept and fund the proposal. But, actually seeing the impact is what's value to me, and actually seeing what comes out of this grant money that you're pouring in your community. And personally, my favorite grant was actually a very recent one. It was called Kate's Cart, where it was an organization that provides books and literary material to children who are in local hospitals. So maybe, for example, a 5-year-old girl who's going through chemotherapy can be given, a Frozen book, again, just to keep her comfortable and, know that, just keep her mind off the surgery and things like that. And, outside of my hands focus, which is very literary, that's something I focus on too. If kids being able to read and write, being able to vocalize what they're trying to say. So this Kate's Cart was just very impactful in my own opinion, in getting books out there and while providing a sense of comfort to these kids there too. So I'm going to move this over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, definitely. I think the seeing impact and seeing where building on. I think this really ties into what I was talking about earlier. Also, just that knowing who you're giving to, and I mean, this whole collaborative grant process that I was talking about was really an opportunity for, I think, the whole junior board to see that, but particularly for me and my sister, who were still kind of new to the whole philanthropic world, to see, okay, this is a site visit. These are these people that are sending in grant applications, and really talk to people. And this picture that's on the slide here is us talking to the people running the nonprofit and really just getting to know them as people and not just an application. And I think I'm volunteering now at one of the organizations that we donated to, and it's that you're seeing the work you're doing, and you're seeing how they come together, and that these are the people, and just both in site visits and volunteering and grant giving, just knowing the people behind them, and really seeing that impact.
What great concrete examples you both gave about these important considerations. Really appreciate it. Janice, I know we both just get awestruck by the transformations of young people that we've had the opportunity to work with through Youth Philanthropy. So let me turn it over to you to share a little bit more about the benefits Excellent Philanthropy sees from their unique perspective, as well as more about the readers.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie. And Luke and Sarah, thank you so much. I think you guys are kind of the key speakers on this webinar, that's for sure. Before I move into the benefits, I just want to share a couple tips that did come in across the transom. One was, much as DECO does, to do grant making through the schools. It can help raise awareness that programs like Youth Philanthropy exist, and frankly, educate young people about what philanthropy is. Just yesterday, as I spoke in my daughter's school, I was very clear to say philanthropy isn't just for rich people, and I think it's a really exciting opportunity to broaden the number of kids that are involved in philanthropy. There was also the recommendation to connect with community leaders to help roll out the initiative and see it through cohesively and smoothly. Oh my gosh, more has come in just the last moment. So we will get to these questions a little bit later in our question section. Next slide, please, Lauren. Thank you all so much for sharing. So as Annie said, we see amazing benefits, and I don't feel the need to read these aloud to all you. I feel like we're preaching to the choir a bit here, as all you listeners on this call clearly are interested in this topic of engaging youth. But I really appreciate the articulation of some of the benefits for youth and for the field. And I'll just say that I've heard corporate leaders that have been observers at Youth Philanthropy Connect say, these are the people I want to hire in the future. And as a parent, I can say these are the kinds of kids I want to raise. So that would be my summary of these amazing benefits. Young people who are articulate, have decision-making skills, are passionate and know what they're passionate about and willing to stand up for those things. So thank you, Sarah and Luke, for really modeling that so beautifully. So we'll shift now from hearing about these tips and this wonderful summary of some of the learning from Youth Philanthropy Connect into this new tool that we're really excited to be introducing to y'all. This is a joint project of Youth Philanthropy Connect, Frieda C. Fox Family Foundation, and Exponent Philanthropy. We call them the Teen Philanthropy Café. And really this was developed because Annie and I were hearing from adults who are tasked with engaging youth in philanthropy that it's hard to figure out how to have these conversations in meaningful ways. So we here at Exponent Philanthropy really pride ourselves as an organization at being pretty good at distilling information into accessible language for those who may not do philanthropy in their full-time lives or those who do. So we took some of our most popular topics that we thought were most relevant for a youth audience and really just translated them into youth-accessible language and a really fun layout. So the topics, we have 7 readers that we've just released in the last few months. They include grant-making, collaboration, impact, leadership, site visits, amongst others. And so far, the response has been really astounding since these went live a little bit over a month ago. We've had more than 500 downloads, which kind of blows our mind. And we're really excited. They're available to the universe as free downloads on our website, or if you want some pretty color copies, a set of them, you'll soon be able to order those from us. So as I said, these can be used in different ways. They might be used by a youth board to dive deep into a topic for conversation together. They might be used one-on-one or two-on-one by an adult leader like Annie, who is tasked with engaging youth. So Annie, Luke, and Sarah will now model for us one of the ways that you might use a reader in preparing for site visits. And Annie, I'd also ask you to share, we often get the question of how appropriate do you think it is to be bringing youth on site visits? And I would say very appropriate, and I'd love to hear from you on that perspective as a foundation ED. Thank you.
Sure. So it's interesting, and we'll dive in. I'll answer your question about site visits in just a second. You know, it's really interesting. We've really loved hearing about the variety of ways that families and foundations are using or planning to use the readers. And I just really want to underscore what Janice said, that these are written for and really have been have kind of a stamp of approval or have been tested by some of our youth philanthropy, by our youth philanthropy leadership team, which Luke and Sarah are both a part of. And so we really feel good that it's solid information and being presented for adults, but also really, you know, seeing the value of and a thumbs up approval from youth as well. And I'll give the example of, as a Fox Foundation, we actually, for any of the individual junior board grants, as well as the collaborative grant process that Sarah was talking about, we do site visits. And you know what we find, and Luke and Sarah will also share a little bit more about their experiences on site visits in a few, but we find that it gives a whole new energy to site visits. And you know, the nonprofits are always actually quite excited. We do a lot of grant making, especially in youth development. So, you know, that these are young people coming to programs that are being put on for young people. Also has just been, you know, very affirming, I think, on both sides of that equation. The other thing that we hear from nonprofit leaders is that young people actually ask just some of the best questions on site visits. And so you'll probably hear some more of that as well. So I would say thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up around site visits, and there's really some prep that you can do. So I'll give the example, at the Fox Foundation, we recently used the site visit Teen Philanthropy Café reader before going on site visits with our junior board members. And the way that we used it was that we sent it out to the junior board members a few days prior to the visit and encouraged them to review the first few pages, which are really, in most of the readers, really just a quick and easy way to understand what's going on around whatever the topic is. And then what we did, because our junior board members had done site visits before, we actually used the car ride on the way to the site visit to debrief and discuss the visit and prep some smart questions or some areas that we really wanted to learn about during the site visit. So for today, I actually asked Sarah and Luke to do the same, to review the first few pages. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to use these double mocha frappe questions from the guide for a discussion. So I'd love to dig into the topic of site visits a little bit more, Luke and Sarah. So Luke, to you first, I was wondering, what are some personal reasons that you might have for visiting a nonprofit? What are some of the things that you'd like to learn?
Yeah, personally, my biggest thing is kind of getting a feel for who the people are and who you're dealing with. I think when you're reviewing something just on paper, you can't get that feel for who a person is. You can't get that feel for who they are, and just that one-on-one interaction adds so much more to that whole experience of knowing what you're dealing with and who you're dealing with, and just that relational value is very important to me.
Absolutely. And what we know from research around our younger generations, period, is that relational piece is really important to connect to learning as well. So yes, absolutely. So Sarah, I was curious from your perspective, what are some of the skills or new learning that you think you could gain from a site visit? Or what have you gained from site visits?
I think being able to ask thoughtful questions is just a crucial life skill. And, even if it's just in having casual conversation with someone, being able to ask these kinds of intelligent questions that really kind of delve deeper, even if you're just trying to get to know someone as a person or if you're trying to get to know them as an organization. Knowing how to ask people things that you're curious about and maintain that conversation with new people is really important. And I think that's something that I was shaky on, especially when starting, and I think it's really improved and will definitely serve me throughout the rest of my life.
And as someone that's gone on a number of these visits, it's been really fun watching your growth. And so, at the beginning, it was really inviting you to ask questions, and now you're really leading those questions and taking ownership of that. And I think that's a really important transition, as a skill, right, that you're learning, but also something that that will allow you to be able to figure out, if that is indeed an organization or an effort that you're wanting to support through grant making.
Definitely.
So, Luke, I was curious, is there anything that feels uncomfortable to you about going on a site visit?
Yeah, I think what's most uncomfortable to me is feeling like I may be being a burden to the nonprofit. Like I'm like, okay, I think they might have better things to do. Again, just feeling like I'm burdening them by being there or asking to take some of their time. So.
Sarah, what advice would you have for Luke about that concern?
I mean, I think, first off, I think that's a totally valid concern, and it's something they actually address in the reader on, I think, the third page is a little tip, that you are going there, and it's something that they have a lot of work to do. And they don't have just free time to shell out. So make sure that it's really something that will be of value to your review process, and that it's not just just for the sake of going. But if you have determined that it's really something that you think will be useful, then understand that it's a mutually beneficial process. That you're there to find out more about them, and they're there to tell you more about themselves, and really be able to present themselves as honestly and realistically as they can, so that you really know them as people and as a group. And so that, just if you do feel that it's something useful, then it's useful for both of you because you're giving, they're getting, and it's be kind, be understanding, but it's for both of you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Absolutely. So Janice, do we have time for one more question? Okay, excellent. So Sarah, I would love to ask you that same question that I asked Luke, which is there anything that feels uncomfortable to you about going on a site visit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm someone who gets very uncomfortable very easily in social situations, even with my own peer group. So going to a brand new place with brand new people and trying to be able to, ask important questions, get everything together, while I'm trying to, manage this new, meeting people and talking to them and strangers. I think that's something that kind of freaks me out a little bit and has definitely been a source of discomfort, I think, on a few site visits, just as because it is something that's kind of social and just, not knowing how to get over that.
And that's something that we hear from a lot of young people as well. So Luke, do you have advice from your perspective for Sarah about her comfort level with going on site visits?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think when you're in that comfort level or that zone where you may feel uncomfortable about going into situations like that, I think it's very important to be prepared. The first step in that is knowing that you might feel uncomfortable, and an effort of not freezing up and forgetting what you have to say is just having that framework and writing questions down so you don't freeze up and can why am I here? I forget what questions I was even going to ask, type of thing. So I think having those questions written down is going to be very helpful in kind of giving you that layout and that timeline of, okay, I wanted to ask this question and this follow-up and however that might go. So.
Excellent. Great. Well, of course, we could spend a lot more time talking through these discussion questions and activities. But what I would love to do is to turn it back over to Janice, who can help us open up for some Q&A from here.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah, Luke, and Annie. And we have a number of good questions, and I'm going to ask each of you one or two of these and just ask you to try to be fairly pithy in your answers so that we can hit 3 or 4 questions in the next 5 minutes or so. So work with me on it, and we'll be able to touch on a couple of very different and really interesting questions that came across the transom. So the first, Annie, I'm going to ask you to respond to, please, which is someone has a new advisory board, and they're looking for ways to involve and inspire but not overwhelm. So having worked with 2 different families around this, could you just share a few tips on how to involve and inspire but not overwhelm? Thank you.
Yes. We talk about this balance between opportunity and obligation, and I know it's something that we talk about in Foundation Land, period, as we think about our boards of directors, and I think that that translates very well as we think about our junior boards or advisory committees. And one aspect that we also really support is that what we hear from a lot of our teams and beyond is that the earlier that you can start your philanthropy experience, the better, because then it just becomes a part of who they are. So it's kind of like if you think about playing the piano, you started by taking piano lessons, and then you maybe didn't need as many lessons, but you were always able to play the piano, let's say. So you could translate that to whatever hobby you could think about with lessons. But this idea of that if we can set that stage at an early and that value and just that kind of muscle memory at a young age, then that will translate over time. And so I think one, starting earlier can help with that balance. I also think, secondly, that really having an open door policy that is flexible, that's kind of permeable for people to be able to come in and out depending on what's happening in their lives is important. There may be a semester where someone's abroad. There may be a time when it's a really heavy school semester and there's AP tests, or so needing to take those things into account. But at the same time, I think also the more you can connect the dots connecting that volunteerism, connecting it to grant making, connecting, really helping to connect the pieces of how your foundation's or your family's philanthropy is related to other parts of your life, I think also can really help make that work more smoothly.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie. And Sarah and Luke, we have some listeners who are interested to hear very specifically, and I'm going to ask you each to do this also very briefly, what the structure of your particular grant-making models is. For instance, Sarah, I know you all have the one collaborative grant, so you can talk about how much that is and what the process is, and whether you also have discretionary grants that you individually can nominate. And Luke, what the process is. Do you work with an adult facilitator? How many youth are in a pod? So if each of you could just describe your grant-making process quite briefly, that would be great for people to hear the the concrete details of your models.
And Janice, I'd love to add in if you guys can also let us know the amounts or ish, because that's also a question we get for details.
Great.
I'll start off with it. Yep. So with HANDS, which is my my county organization, our process kind of goes. So we apply for DECO, and every year we get roughly about $10,000. We aren't doing enormous grant applications. So every application that comes in is normally under $500. We'll have some over, we'll have some being $1,000. That will fund. It kind of all depends on where our funds are and where they're at. And they'll come in, it's kind of all based off our mission statement, what we fund. Ours is basically off of literacy, technology, and just community furtherance. So we won't do, like fees, we won't do salaries, we won't do anything like that. It has to be around that technology and literacy basis. I mean, again, it can only be within the county. What else do you want me to answer here, Annie?
And how long is your program? Like from the point that you start to the time that you make your grant?
Gotcha. So, so we start at the beginning of the school year, and applications will come in basically monthly. Whenever our next meeting is when we'll kind of go over them. And we have about 20 youth that are involved in HANDS, and the application will come before us, or will give us this application. We'll all read over the application again, and kind of decide as a group of youth whether we like this grant, whether we wish to fund it, and if we do, we go through the whole formal, all who wish to fund the application say yay and nay, and if it goes through us, it then has to go through the adult board at the County Community Foundation, and I don't think there's ever been a time where it's been denied by them that we've accepted, so it just has to go through the adults too before it gets out to the funder. So.
That was perfect. Thank you, Luke.
Yeah, for us, we have, I believe it's $1,000 for 2 organizations or $2,000 for one organization every year, and that's for each of the 6 junior board members. And we go through like a form for all, making sure it fits the mission statement, that it's in the right area within Los Angeles. Then we confirm it with our supervisors, and then we do a presentation. We put together a slideshow presentation, and we present it to the board, and we explain what they do, why we want to help them, how it will help youth in the area. And they will then vote to approve it, which I think pretty much always happens. And so then after that, if we feel the need to, we'll go on site visits, or maybe before or after we've given the grant. And pretty much as simple as that.
So that's the individual grant process.
Yeah, sorry.
That's junior board member has $2,000
exactly
per year to nominate. And then can you describe just as succinctly the collaborative grant process?
Yeah, sure. So the collaborative grant process is $50,000, and we get together and we have our own individual junior board meetings, and we discuss what specifically we want to focus on. It's been leadership, advocating for leadership opportunities. And we decide, then we open up the invitations to apply for grants. and they send in letter of inquiries, which we review, respond to. Then we get in our grant applications, narrow those down, go on site visits, then review, vote on terms of who we think should get full amount of money, partial money, no money, etc. And then we give those donations.
Great. Thank you both for sharing. I know people are just interested to hear the specifics. So I have two last questions to close with. One is very micro and one is very macro. So Sarah, I'm going to ask you to speak to the micro because I know the Fox family engages kids quite young. We have people asking about how to involve very young kids, like 6 to 9-year-olds, meaningfully in grant making. So Sarah, if you could speak to that briefly, and then I've got one more for you coming up, Luke.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have, we definitely have those younger board members, and I think there's a tendency to, sort of write off kids like that. They're like, oh, they're little, they don't know what they're talking about, and it's important to understand that they are little and they don't have a lot of experience in this, and that you're starting them out, and everything they say isn't going to be necessarily this incredible amount of wisdom because if they're 7 or 8, they're new to this and they're learning the process. So it's important to to know that the age of the kids you're working with, like, understand that they are kids, but also understand that they do have insight. And so to take everything they say, as it is in context from their age group, but also, think seriously about the things they say because kids tend to be more honest and just speak to what they're thinking a lot of the time, and there's definitely a lot to be gained from listening to that. And so just making sure to start them and, guiding them through the process so by the time they're in high school, they're really familiar with it and able to think critically and give critically and know the world and what they're doing.
Great, thank you. I'm really torn between two questions here, Luke, so I'm going to let you choose which one. They're two big meaty ones. We can't do both, so you choose which one you feel more keen to speak to. Thank you, Sarah, for that really thoughtful answer as well. So one is about how you think about the connections between local and global issues, because you are giving very locally, and how that then you think about it in a more global context, if you want to go there. And the other choice is, how do you conceptualize money? Do you think about it as a burden or a positive force in the world? I'm going to trust you to take one of those biggies and run with it. Go ahead.
All right. So I think I'm going to go with the money one here. So I guess the first thing, I've never really thought about it being a burden. I've thought about it as always being a positive good. I really don't think too much about people being in the selfish standpoint of taking the money and things themselves. But the way I've always viewed it has always been a way to further the community, in a way to I guess to help other people. I've always viewed it as not something, oh, look at all this money, let's see what I can do with it, but look at all this money and see what this money could do for my community. How this money could help my community in many different ways outside literacy and things like that, and just in terms of how I can make someone else's life better with this money, and the best way to do that, and what the smartest and most intellectual way is to implement that within my community. So I hope that answers the question you were looking for.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we're approaching the end of our time, and we want to honor the time and honor our listeners who've all really stuck with us, which is awesome. So Luke, thanks for taking that one on the fly, and Sarah, thank you for taking the other. We would just ask you now for final words of wisdom. Luke, we'll give you a chance to catch your breath, and Sarah, what are your closing words of wisdom?
I think for me, just knowing that youth aren't necessarily aware of, the grant opportunities and the things that we're looking to encourage in youth, and just, giving those opportunities to them that they don't know about, because, the word grant maker means nothing to them, much less that they might have insight into something like that. And just, let them know you're there and take them seriously.
Awesome. Thank you. And Luke?
Yep. I guess mine was just to sit back and let youth do their thing. But I think offer experience, reassurance, and reminders. Because at the end of the day, we are busy, and we need those constant reminders on what's up in the schedule and what our responsibilities are. So.
Great. Thank you, and thank you both so much from the bottom of our hearts for joining us today. Annie, if you have any very brief closing thoughts, and then Lauren will bring us home here.
Sounds good. Well, what you'll see on the next slide is actually advice that's been mined from youth philanthropy efforts across the country. And I guess my closing advice would be, if you're already involving youth in philanthropy, please share with us what you're up to. And if you're interested in beginning, please try something. The teen readers are actually a really great way to get started with basic, yet I feel like really smart topical information, discussion questions, and really accessible activities. And you know, I couldn't agree more with Luke about sit back and then watch the magic happen. And I think really by offering smart questions that allow them to experience and think about and process what they're learning is really, you know, will really help kick off or even further the work that you're doing in really amazing ways. So please do start young, and we hope that you'll reap the benefits of compassionate, community-minded change agents for good, which I know we've definitely seen in Sarah and Luke today. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to our compassionate, community-minded youth for joining us today, taking time out of your busy daily school schedule to join us. Annie, thank you so much for leading the charge and for working with us on these. So big thank yous all around, and of course thank you to my colleague Janice and to the Frieda C. Family Foundation for their support of the Teen Philanthropy Café series, this program, as well as Youth Philanthropy Connect. We look forward to seeing how it grows, and we hope that those of you heed Annie's call and send along the kind of work you're doing so that we really can have a comprehensive look at youth philanthropy in our country. So contact information, which we'll send after the call. We worked with one of Annie's colleagues, Catherine Scott. She's the contact for the youth, so if you need to get in touch or have more questions, that's the way to go. The readers, as Janice said, are online. We were looking at one live online earlier. You can find them, and I'll send the link after the webinar. And Teen Philanthropy is going on the road. They've got programs from Houston to New York to Seattle. We'll have a link after the webinar. You can always connect with Exponent Philanthropy on social media. Hope you were tweeting today. And we've got some upcoming programs. I'd like to specifically point out one, speaking of youth, when the youth get a little older, they want to connect with their peers in our Next Gen program. If you know some Next Gen folks who are looking to engage, that we still have space available for that. And with that, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day today to join us. And we ask that you fill out a brief survey when you close the webinar. So you just click on that file button, click exit webinar, and you'll see a survey come up. And with that, I conclude today's program. Thanks, everyone. A big wave on the webcams. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.